The underworld of Tokyo. The seedy nightlife of kabukicho. And the lingering whiff of cigarettes. These are just some of the elements that make up one of Japan's most celebrated mystery adventure series. Conceived during an era when adventure games were abundant, this one stood out with its dynamic characters, vivid storytelling, and hard-boiled approach. Unlike its contemporaries, the series would go on to have more than 20 releases over the course of 3 decades, and would be the launchpad for many notable figures in the gaming industry, like Katsuya Terada, Kazutaka Kodaka, and Kazushige Nojima. And we'll be speaking directly to some of the people who helped bring the series to life. A gaming icon few know outside of Japan, this is the story of Detective Saburo Jinguji. Adventure games became popular in Japan during the mid-1980s, especially those involving detectives. One of the first adopters of the genre came from Data East. The company was known for its widely successful arcade hits, like Burger Time, Karate Champ, and Bad Dudes. With the rising popularity of home consoles, Data East needed new games specifically made just for that market. One of the first to come out of this initiative was Tantei Jinguji Saburo. Starting in 1987 on the Famicom disk system, Detective Saburo Jinguji follows the eponymous private eye as he solves the mysteries behind murders, kidnappings, and the occasional lost dog.
この、探偵神宮寺三郎シリーズはですね、日本のテキストアドベンチャーゲームの中で歴史のある、かつ有名なシリーズの一つとなっております。でプレイヤーは、主人公の神宮寺三郎となりまして、事件現場であるとか、あとは周辺の聞き込み調査を行ってですね、事件の謎を解明していくというゲームになります。
From the start, the series was envisioned with a mature, hard-boiled art style. Other adventure games before and after Jinguji invoked a lighter anime look, making Saburo distinct from the crowd.
子供の頃、友達が横浜港連続殺人事件というゲームを遊んでいるところを、見たのが初めてでして、画面の雰囲気などがとても大人なゲームなというのが第一印象でした。
In one of his first commercial works, Katsuya Terada was hired to do the art and design the characters.
その神宮寺の最初のスタッフの中の一人の、当時はその仕事がみんな重なってたりするので、この仕事はデベロップだけみたいなのがなくて、みんな兼業してるわけ。だからできることをする。で、その中でデータイーストの広報に竹内さんって人がいて、はい、で、パッケージ、そのゲームを作るのはいいけど、キャラクターデザインとかは誰に頼めばいいんだろうみたいな話になって、はい、もう、絵が描ける人だったら頼めるんじゃないかってなって、で、竹内さんが、自分の知り合いのデザイナーの女の子に、はい、絵が描ける人いないかと、乱暴な質問をするわけです。はい、それで、その人が紹介したのが、俺の、4つ上の学校の先輩で、はい、で、彼は、当時、完全に子供向けの絵を描いていたので、内容を聞かないでデータイーストに行ったら、探偵もので、すごいアダルトなゲームにしたいと。はい。って聞いて、全然俺じゃないわってなって、すぐ電話がこっちにかかってきて、これは勝也の仕事だからちょっと行ってみたら。
Saburo was born to the wealthy Jinguji clan, the third and youngest son. His unseen father runs the Jinguji group conglomerate. Against his affluent family's wishes, he chose to follow his grandfather's footsteps and trained to be a detective in New York City. Before long, he established the Jinguji Detective Agency in the Shinjuku ward of Tokyo. Early games had him at 29 years old, but later entries would age him up to 32. To get around, he drives his trusty Mini Cooper. Despite his stern exterior, he's not without heart, always willing to help those in need. But Saburo is also a man haunted by his past, and how it shaped his life as a detective. When not on a job, Saburo prefers to spend his evenings with a smoke in one hand and drink in the other, often choosing to pass out on his office couch. Though rare to see him lose his cool, it's even rarer to see him without his smokes. Striking fear in the hearts of Shinjuku's criminals, with his sharp mind and firm resolve, Saburo Jinguji has risen to be one of the city's best detectives.
神宮寺三郎というキャラクターはですね、実は結構無口な存在だと思ってまして、 どちらかというとプレイヤーの心を代弁してくれる存在という、立ち位置が強いんじゃないかなと思っております。神宮寺三郎、このシリーズはですね、ハードボイルドな作品になってまして、結構神宮寺三郎がですね、こう探偵という職業でありながらこう犯罪ギリギリなことを行ったりするんですね。で、そういったものもですね、実はそのユーザーのその日常的に抱えている不満であるとか、そういったものをある意味体現していたり、そういうポジションの、キャラクターであるなというふうに思ってまして、普通だったら主人公ってあまり悪いことはしないんですけれども、神宮寺三郎はですね、自分の正義のためだったら多少の罪は犯しても良いと考えている人間でして、
Series producer Eiichi Nishiyama has said, "Honestly, I wouldn't want to befriend someone like Jinguji because he's not very sociable. However, he has a very firm sense of his way of life, which attracts people to him, including me."
神宮寺は結局、髪が立ってるのは、やっぱりその、印象付けたいっていうのがまずあったんで、キャラクター付けとして、その、パッと見てすぐわかるっていうと、髪型とかになりやすいんで、もう設定が2枚目やから。ちょっとあんまり現実ではそんなにせえへん髪型にしとこうかな、みたいな感じで、まだ X ジャパンもいなかったし。
なるほど。
オールバック的なイメージでちょっと、わーってなってるっていうことにしました。
But a detective is only as good as his assistant, which is where the beautiful Yoko Misono comes in. The backbone of the agency, Yoko is in charge of the paperwork. She was 22 when the series started, but like Saburo, has been aged up to 26. She's an exceptional polyglot, and while it may seem like she's wasting her talents as Jinguji's assistant, she sought out the job after meeting Saburo in New York. She's a pro detective in her own right, often being essential to Saburo's investigations. And sometimes, she even takes on her own cases. She may not enjoy her boss's chain-smoking habit, but she's devoted herself to the agency, even referring to Saburo as sensei. A running gag of the series is Yoko's appearance. She changes hairstyles in almost every game, and depending on the artist, Yoko may look like a completely different character.
そうですね。もう結構、俺が書いたのがもうそのままキャラクターになるっていう感じでスタッフが動いてくれていたので、ほとんどその何を直してくれるみたいなことは全然なくて、あれに関して。で、ヨーコは、当時は俺、女性を描くのが苦手だった。なんかね、描くたびに難しくて、もう、なんか、毎回髪型変えたのかなぐらいの勢いで描いてて、で、出したらそのままどうしてしまうのなんか、気分で変えたんじゃないかという。
Another artist for the series is Juni, who said, "I feel that Yoko's visual changes reflects the fashion trends of each period in the long history of the Jinguji series." Then there's Sanzo Kumano, an inspector for the Shinjuku police. Oftentimes he's Saburo's client, and they team up to solve cases. He's usually very cheerful, but when duty calls, he shifts gears without hesitation, as he takes his job on the force very seriously. Though old enough to be Saburo's father, the two are best of friends, often sharing stories over drinks.
熊野のとこだけ一回俺が打たせてもらったんです。ゲームで使うと。本当はそのゲームデザイナーというか、ドット打つ人が、俺のデザインをドットに変えるんやけど、ちょっとやってみたいって言って、データイそばに行って、ポチッポチッポチッと、熊野の顔だけは、一番最初のやつは俺が作った。
These three make up the main characters of the series, appearing together in almost every entry. Terada would provide all the artwork for the first couple of games, and would continue to support the series with cover art and occasionally in-game portraits for the next few decades. Even when he's not directly involved, all games still credit him as the original character designer. In many ways, Saburo Jinguji is the quintessential hard-boiled game series. It's certainly the longest running. Japan caught the noir bug around the same time as America. Films like The Maltese Falcon and Kiss Me Deadly would grace Japanese theaters during the 40s and 50s. And literature like the Lou Archer and Philip Marlowe novels also made it to Japanese shores. The country even got their own version of the hard-boiled focus magazine, Manhunt. Soon the image of a grizzled detective would become a known character archetype. Jinguji encompasses many of these qualities. He wears a suit at all times, is an avid drinker, and gave up riches to follow his own path. The game's stories also follow typical hard-boiled conventions. Saburo doesn't just solve the case, he puts himself in the heat of the action, often ending up in life-or-death situations. Saburo also delivers a noir-styled monologue when a case is over, though not every game includes this. Staying true to the stereotype, Jinguji is a bachelor, but his love life isn't well documented, if there even is one. Unlike other hard-boiled detectives, women don't hold power over him. Though some may tempt him, Jinguji resists their advances. In fact, a femme fatale might be the biggest noir trope this series is missing. Of the 20-something games, only a handful contain what could be considered a femme fatale. Another way Jinguji breaks away from the mold is his relationship with the police. In Western noir, it's common for the disgruntled private eye to be at odds with the police, but thanks to his relationship with Kumano, the police are often Saburo's allies. A typical Saburo Jinguji game uses a menu command system, with actions like investigating your surroundings, moving to a different area, presenting items, and speaking with others. This is the standard formula all games follow. Players also have access to Saburo's notepad to review happenings and the profiles for persons of interest. Sometimes Saburo must sort out his thoughts, and the player has to correctly answer questions about the case up to that point. Interrogating suspects is a core part of the series. Some games use what's called TPS, or Talk Profile System, where picking up visual clues about a person is as important as saying the right thing. The same goes for the occasional fisticuff. Saburo is adept at boxing, and can hold himself in a fight. Most brawls play out just by using commands, with the player having to decide the right attack based on context clues. Similar to other adventure games, game overs are virtually non-existent, with some exceptions. If the player fails at something, usually some unexpected phenomenon gets Saburo out of a bind. For example, here, Saburo must identify and catch a girl trying to sneak by him. If the player misses or lets the girl go by, Yoko will miraculously call Jinguji, notifying him of the girl's location, and the story continues as normal. While the player isn't technically punished, the flow of the game is interrupted, with Saburo, and by proxy the player, finding themselves in embarrassing situations. Despite its 30-year history and nearly 20 installments, the series has largely kept the same core gameplay structure. This was an intentional choice by the developers. Producer Eiichi Nishiyama said, "The series used the command selection system that had been used since before the Famicom. With the change of time, we have seen other games try new functions and new systems, but I think we were able to provide our users some comfort by continuing to use the old-fashioned system and the same world settings." While Saburo Jinguji doesn't stray too far from the adventure game blueprint, it did contribute to innovating the genre. When important information is learned, a sound effect triggers, letting the player know that what has been said or transpired is crucial. A series staple, this element was quickly adopted by other adventure games, like Nintendo's Famicom Detective Club. There's also the television-styled eye-catchers. Taken from drama and mystery shows from the era, these bumpers are sometimes used as clever loading screens, but they became series tradition and are cheeky callbacks to the crime shows that came before. Yet the defining feature of Saburo Jinguji is the smoking command. Saburo is a chain smoker, and at almost any point, he can take out a cigarette to clear his head. This will usually give the player hints about what to do next. And each time he does, the text box reads, "I lit a cigarette," which has become the series' well-known phrase. If Jinguji is in a no-smoking area, he stops himself from lighting up and takes a deep breath instead. The series is so synonymous with smoking that a number of official lighters have been made. In fact, Saburo Jinguji is the first video game to give the player direct control to smoke, preceding the original Metal Gear for several months.
その時にタバコ吸うというコマンドがあったり、あと私が知る限りではタバコ吸うというコマンドは神宮寺以外は知らないですね。
But an adventure game would be nothing without its story, and Saburo Jinguji has been praised for its approach to storytelling, making it real. There are no supernatural forces or high-tech gadgetry. Saburo Jinguji stays within the confines of reality, and in doing so, the series tackles subjects few others would dare to. Drugs, gangs, and sex are common talking points in games, but Jinguji takes it a step further by explicitly stating things like STIs, sexual assault, abortions, and doping. Bringing focus to such topics is never meant for shock value, but necessary elements to move the story along. Saburo Jinguji pushed Japan's social taboos to the forefront of its narratives, especially in the 1990s, being among the first games to address such topics. It would continue to do so in later entries too. The backstory for a character in Ghost of the Dusk was a prisoner of war during World War II. It's rare for a Japanese game to use controversial history to further the story, but that's the Jinguji way. Central characters will have flaws that go against the typical perception. The games want to see them in a different way. For example, the case For Love features a single mother, divorced from her husband because of an affair she had. It doesn't frame anyone as a villain or someone must be blamed. It's just how it is. Seeing another side of people is a specialty of the series, especially because it never goes overboard.
神宮寺のキャラクターはリアルと虚構が絶妙なバランスで混じり合ったキャラクターと思っています。昔ながらのハードボイルなキャラクターが私たちのいる現実の世界で生きていると思わせるようなリアリティがあるというのが大きな特徴と思っています。現実で起こった出来事を物語に積極的に取り入れていくのが神宮寺の大きな特徴と思っています。
ハードボイルドっていうふうに歌っている以上はですね、やっぱりあまり正義の味方、正義の味方ではあるんですけども、ステレオタイプのよくあるタイプではなくて、ちょっと犯罪にも手を犯したりであるとか、どちらかというとただのいい人ではなくて、よりリアルないい人っていうんですかね。現実世界でそういういろんなしがらみのある中で、その犯罪であるとか描写しにくいこととかを表現する、そういうところが他の作品とはちょっと違う部分、オリジナリティの部分かなというふうに思っています。
Kenji Sato also said, "We consider the Saburo Jinguji series a hard-boiled work, which is rare nowadays. In this worldview, we even depict criminal acts and reference taboo subjects when necessary. Since we aim for the series to be for adults, to a certain extent, we try not to avoid certain expressions more than necessary, and we dare to describe even taboo subjects with a more realistic touch." Yakuza organizations are no strangers to game depictions, but it's not often the main character, on the side of justice, gets chummy with them. One of Saburo's closest associations is the Yakuza organization Kanto Meiji Gumi. He even knows the head of the clan, Gozo, showing he's held in high regard by the dangerous group. But prescribed subject matters aren't just what the narratives are known for. Saburo and his allies are often pushed to the edge and gain scars that transfer to future games. And nothing is off limits in Saburo Jinguji. The narratives reflect real life. Many villains are those players can sympathize with. They've done bad things to survive, or by complete circumstance. Passing judgment is usually left up to the player, but Saburo Jinguji still has a job to complete.
まずプロットは一番初めに作ります。でそこから、プロットをもとにシナリオと、絵やプログラムなどを作っていきます。基本的にはプロデューサーとシナリオライターが決めていきます。シナリオについてはシナリオライターの方から案を出すこともあれば、プロデューサーがお題を出してそれをもとにシナリオライターが考えていくといったこともあります。
According to writer Hirotaka Inaba, the plot is usually written at the start of the game's development. I sometimes make major revisions, and sometimes the development staff makes changes. In that sense, the initial story and the final story are often different. In my case, I often make proposals after meeting with the director. Even after the scenario is completed, I make various small and large revisions as needed, in conjunction with the game design. For the game At the End of the Dream, I controlled everything related to the scenario, and made adjustments until I was satisfied, right up until the game's completion. However, it's not uncommon for major changes to be made, based solely on the judgment of the development staff. With the game Daedalus, the staff made fairly large-scale changes in the latter half of the game. The content was quite different from what I had written, but I respected their judgment for a variety of reasons. While Saburo is out investigating, he may come across 4 suspicious letters. These are passwords that can be used from the title screen, and most games include them. A plethora of bonus material can be obtained from finding these, like character profiles, artwork, movies, statements from the developers, and more. Sometimes these can get a little goofy, like mini biographies for the NPCs, and some of these go pretty in-depth. This one says she's trying to get her son into a prestigious junior high school. And this one, he's having an affair with the nurse? Other passwords can disclose details about the game's development, like showcasing characters that didn't make the final cut. One password is used for each game. And you can always find it in the instruction book. They're certainly worth finding for fans, but it could be rather tricky to find them all. Some require a second playthrough to find, or by repeatedly inspecting one specific area. But for something a bit lighter, There's Saburo Jinguji Mysterious Case Files, a side game most entries include. Saburo and his friends are given chibi forms, and the tone is meant to be comedic. Notably, Yoko is represented as a hyperactive robot, with a little dongle above her head. Kumano is also depicted to be a bit more airheaded, while Jinguji is the straight man. These games play out a bit differently than the main series, and can have multiple endings. Players are given a rundown of a situation, and must deduce the next steps or find the culprit on their own. This includes finding a flaw in the story when questioning suspects, or even using visual clues to point out discrepancies. If not, it's a game over, wherein Jinguji usually faces the wrath of Yoko. A lot of problem solving is required from the player, unlike the main games. Some cases need the player to carefully look through images, or there's a load of information to process, and sometimes it's a combination. Some players might even prefer these side games, due to their wacky nature and head-scratching puzzles, and the games can be legitimately funny. When a case is finally over, after the credits roll, players are met with the incorrect English phrase, "See you in next trouble," which has become a series tradition. The Saburo Jinguji series is a long and proud one, and it's time to investigate the series from the very beginning. The very first entry, Shinjuku Central Park Murder Case, was released on the Famicom Disk System in 1987. The murder victim is a popular hostess Momoko. This was quite risque for a video game in 1987. Despite being the first entry, it has one feature the succeeding games would never use again, an RPG-esque hub world. As Saburo, you can walk around and communicate with people or check your surroundings. This map is basically what Side A is used for. Once you start investigating, you switch to Side B. This means the disk has to be switched repeatedly, making for constant loading screens. Besides the field screen, there is one other element future games would not adopt: the difficulty. The player must piece clues and evidence together and tell Kumano who the killer is. Players are given a vast amount of freedom to explore, but the game runs on a time limit. If the case is not solved by the 30th day, it's game over. With so many options, it's more than possible for a player to reach a dead end, and while you can save your progress, it will take away in-game time. Further, there are some instances where a game over can instantly occur, and for a series known for being pragmatic, the solution may seem a little out there. For some reason, players input their names at the very start of the game, and it's never used until the end, congratulating them on solving the case. As the music plays, the game assures Saburo Jinguji will be back, with a brand new case. The following year, Saburo headed to Kanagawa to take on a new case in Yokohama port serial murder. Central Park Murder sold decently, but players and critics found the difficulty overwhelming. In addition, the switching of disk size came off as tedious. Data East responded by releasing Port Serial Murder on a standard Famicom cartridge, and having the gameplay be more straightforward. The time limit was removed, and gameplay is strictly menu-based. Saving no longer punishes the player either, though it does require a long password. A series first is the inclusion of background music while investigating, which enhances the drama, as Port Serial Murder ups the storyline, with more mysteries and higher stakes. Saburo is called to Yokohama to help find the missing Eva. The closer he gets to finding her, the closer he comes to an international scheme. A novel aspect is the inclusion of in-game cutscenes, predating Ninja Gaiden, a game known for its early use of cutscenes. Yokohama was received better than Jinguji's first outing, and would become a favorite amongst the growing fanbase. Saburo and Yoko also felt like genuine characters, with more dialogue exchanged between the two. But in a bold move, Data East returned to the disk system with the following release, A Dangerous Duo. This is the first of 3 games to be named after a song by Kenji Sawada, a famous Japanese singer. True to the name, the game was released in dual packages, Part 1 in December 1988, and Part 2 in February 1989. You cannot play Part 2 without having beaten Part 1 first. You must insert Part 1 with a completion save into the system, and insert Part 2 when prompted. Dangerous Duo was also the first video game written by Kazushige Nojima, who would go on to write Final Fantasy VII and become one of the industry's most well-known writers. His writing breathes life into the characters, and a story full of twists and turns. Actually, the story might be seen as complicated to some. It involves mistaken identity, smuggling, a corrupt company, and of course, murder. The game even touches upon Yoko's past, as a former boyfriend makes an appearance. It's kind of incredible how much was able to be achieved with the story, considering this is a Famicom game. Notably, Yoko is made playable for the first time, but only briefly. Though the gameplay remains the same as Yokohama, Dangerous Duo included more perilous situations for Saburo and Yoko to overcome, and made them regulars in the adventure game scene. Achoo! Thank you. The Famicom era would end with another cartridge release in 1990s As Time Passes. This is the second game to be named after a Kenji Sawada song. By this point, it was clear the developers felt comfortable with the gameplay, as the formula hasn't been changed at all since Yokohama. Instead, they focused their attention on new ways to tell the story. Nojima returned as the writer, and gave the narrative a little spin by presenting it entirely via flashbacks, as Saburo and Yoko relay their adventure to Kumano in the present. The game uses a sepia tone when in the past, and normal colors in the present. Yoko is now a fully playable character. Half of the game is spent playing as her, while the other half is spent as Saburo. This is the first game in the series not to involve a murder. Practically every detective adventure game on the Famicom involved a murder. It was almost guaranteed. As Time Passes, instead, primarily revolves around domestic disputes, and has themes of family, trust, and protecting what's dear to you. One character says this early on in the game: everyone lies in order to protect their loved ones. That sentiment becomes a driving force, as nearly every character ends up deceiving Jinguji in some way. But they have legitimate reasons to do so. Despite being a Famicom game, the characters have realistic and nuanced qualities to them, and by subverting genre expectations and avoiding traditional crime tropes, the game stands out and has been dubbed a classic of its genre. It shows how Saburo Jinguji differs from other adventure games with its stories. Yoko is on a quest to return a lost boy to his mother, while Saburo investigates a robbery. These two cases eventually become one, and a memorable end to Saburo's early career. Saburo Jinguji would then go on hiatus. At this point, Data East underwent significant company changes, and a new generation of creators would take on the responsibility of reviving Shinjuku's Private Eye. They would simply be known as Team Jinguji, and at the head of the team was Eiichi Nishiyama, who would stay with the series for almost 15 years. The series started as my senpai's project, and I was not part of it. I had no idea I would become the team leader later on. With a new team in tow, Saburo Jinguji would enter his most critically acclaimed period, with fresh gameplay elements, music theming, and an expanded universe. New characters were introduced that would become series mainstays. The Amanuma sisters, Kazumi and Minami, run Bar Kazumi, taking ownership after their parents passed away. And it just so happens to be Jinguji's favorite watering hole. Kazumi carries a torch for Jinguji, something her sister is acutely aware of, but Jinguji remains oblivious to. The bar usually acts as a hub where players can take a break and play mini-games like blackjack and darts. A sound test can also be accessed thanks to a jukebox. There are lots of secrets and bonuses to be found at Bar Kazumi, and if he plays his cards right, Jinguji might get a bit more service than he expected. Shiho Miyoshi is a forensic officer working out of the Shinjuku police station. Though slightly unkempt, she lives for her job and her skills are top-notch. She also periodically appears in the mystery case files. Akira Maeda, a university professor turned homeless figurehead. As the story goes, he became fed up with society after being involved in a dispute, and chose the destitute lifestyle. He has an easygoing personality, making him popular amongst the homeless community, and knows just about everyone, which comes in handy for Jinguji. And then there's the Kanto Meiji Gumi. The leader of the organization, Gozo Furin, appeared in most of the Famicom games, but Team Jinguji tweaked his personality and the Yakuza group entirely. Saburo is especially close with the Wakagashira, Naoiza and Mazumi. The two often support each other, and he's become one of Saburo's closest confidants. But there's a mutual understanding that the two may not always be on the same side. Team Jinguji would also set the direction of the music, focusing on lounge and bar jazz, fitting the somber yet mysterious tone the games were striving for. Most soundtracks were done by famed Sega composer Seiichi Hamada. With a new vision in place, the team was ready for their debut game. 1996's Unfinished Report saw Saburo Jinguji go multi-platform with a simultaneous release on the PlayStation and Sega Saturn. The game took advantage of its CD format, with more characters and dialogue than ever before. Pivotal story sequences were told with cinematics, and the addition of voices made the story resonate with players more than Saburo's pixelated past. This was the first game to incorporate taboo subjects into its narrative. Nationalism, drugs, illegal immigration, and animosity towards foreigners in general are driving parts of the story. Jinguji even has to snuff out the hideout for marijuana trafficking. This was extremely rare for a Japanese game to tackle in the 1990s. While it can be argued other games, like RPGs, used metaphors to address these subjects, Saburo Jinguji in its modern-day setting made the social commentary unmistakable. The game utilized a zapping system, meaning players can change characters in between chapters to see another perspective. Saburo and Yoko are playable, along with Kumano and the one-off newcomer Kyosuke Yono. Playing through the game as all characters is required to see the entire story, as mysteries in one character's route have resolutions in another's. Not content with just being an adventure game, Unfinished Report contains pseudo 3D segments, like trailing missions and a shootout car chase. Unfinished Report was well received, with praise given to its story and characters, and critics noted that the series was making a natural evolution from its Famicom days. But longtime fans noted the hard-boiled style was somewhat missing, with an art design closer to that of a colorful anime. Team Jinguji hoped to address this and refine the gameplay in the next installment. At the End of the Dream released in 1998, once again releasing on the PlayStation 1 and Sega Saturn. Almost everything was enhanced. The visuals are gritty, the soundtrack sets a striking atmosphere, and the zapping system was greatly improved. It also came with a mini CD that contains a short drama and soundtrack. The game was written by Hirotaka Inaba, who will later write for Square Enix games like Iron Setsuna, Lost Sphere, and Oninaki. And according to him, the theme of At the End of the Dream was to get to know Saburo Jinguji deeply. I spent a lot of time talking about Saburo Jinguji, and that time was very meaningful. I felt that he shut many doors inside him. Could I look through them? How would he feel if he looked into them? What kind of event could give him such a chance? In this way, I created the story while deepening my interpretation. The game unfolds with a seemingly routine investigation that quickly snowballs into something bigger, the Jinguji staple. Saburo takes on a stalking case from Yoko's friend Yuka. After apprehending the creep, all appears resolved until a few days later, Yuka has vanished. To compound matters, Kumano discloses she is just one in a series of missing women. From here, the player can experience the story as the main trio, alongside Yuka's younger sister Miki. Before long, Saburo uncovers a link between the women and the manufacturing of a dangerous new drug. But at the same time, Saburo is haunted by recurring nightmares of his past in New York City. There's an exceptional balance between the overall plot and Saburo's personal struggles, intertwining them without feeling contrived. Saburo doesn't shirk his detective responsibilities, but does shoulder his anxiety throughout the game, something that can be felt when playing as him, or witness when playing as Yoko. This is the first game to raise the curtain on Saburo's past. There was already an established backstory since the start, but the finer details are elaborated on, including an incident involving him and Yoko in New York. Saburo chased after a drug addict, who just so happened to be Yoko's boyfriend. He took her hostage and forced Saburo to shoot. A new tradition would also start with this game: elaborate opening movies. These would be present in every game from here on out. The opening for At the End of the Dream was directed by filmmaker Shimiko Sato, who at the time was known for the live-action Echo Echo Azark films. On how she got involved with Jinguji, she said, "I went to school with Terada-san. That's how I got to know him. He's the one that recommended me for the games." They were pretty simple. I edited and animated them all in After Effects. Speaking of Terada, this is the most involved he's been with a game yet. In addition to doing the main cover, he also did the art for event scenes and portraits for most characters. And the characters themselves stand out as among the most memorable to date. Every character, including minor NPCs, has a sense of history behind them, like they're real people. This extends even to the villains, whose motivations are understood, but not just, and the realism of the characters increases the immersion in the story. Unlike Unfinished Report, the entire narrative can be enjoyed by playing as one character, but playing as all four characters provides nuances and feelings the player otherwise wouldn't pick up on. Miki exudes a more positive attitude when seen through the eyes of Saburo or Yoko, but going through her route reveals her inner sadness. Meanwhile, Kumano is desperate to set things right, and when he's betrayed by an ally, it deeply impacts him. Fortunately, experiencing different character routes isn't as tedious as Unfinished Report. A story map has been added, letting players check when events occur, and allowing them to go back and play other chapters. And with a narrative as powerful as this one, this change is very appreciated. The climax might be the finest in the entire series. It not only delivers a dramatic sequence that ties the story together, but also serves as a defining moment for both Saburo and Yoko. At the End of the Dream is considered a high point for the series, with its gripping story, excellent art by Terada, moving soundtrack, and character development for the detective, Many consider this to be the very best of Saburo Jinguji. Saburo had 2 outings in 1999. The early collection was a compilation of the Famicom games on 1 disc. And they look stunning here. The emulation is top-notch. The games also no longer feature passwords, but save directly to the memory card. Character files are also included for each game, which is a great touch. Also included were a handful of extras, like an art gallery and quizzes. Cigarettes can be collected, which are used to unlock goodies like little mini-games or hints, which features the main trio commenting on the games. One unlockable even discusses the evolution of Yoko's appearance. Other extras include real-world trivia about locales and objects featured in the series. For example, Dangerous Duo features a puzzle surrounding a 5-yen coin. Early Collection gives historical context to said coin. It's this kind of detail that makes Early Collection not just a fantastic way to play the older games, but a love letter to the series entirely. And later in the year came Before the Light Goes Out. The story might not be as engaging as previous outings, but it does its job to let the new gameplay system shine. Gone was the zapping system. Only Jinguji is playable, but in exchange is the most open-ended entry in the series. There isn't one solution for progression. 2 players can reach the end without doing the same things, but they must think smart and think fast, as a new time system makes players take into account how long it will take to reach a destination. NPCs are on a schedule, and wasting time just might throw the investigation into disarray. There are 30 different endings. These are based on how questions are answered, if the player misses something, or coming to the wrong conclusion. Some of these can be considered game overs, as many involve character deaths, whereas others are what-if scenarios. It is admittedly fun to play the game without any sort of guide, and see just which ending you get. But if you want the true ending, you have to put in the work. Yoko and other characters can be given directions at the start of each day, and being wise about what they look into can save an immense amount of time. And Saburo goes international for the first time, taking his investigation to Austria. Some may consider it long and grueling, and reaching the true ending might be a daunting task, but those up for a challenge will discover an unparalleled entry Jinguji never replicated. Before the Light Goes Out was the last game made by Data East. By the turn of the millennium, Data East accumulated a debt of millions of dollars. Concrete details are scarce, but it's believed that as arcades died down, so did Data East's profits. And while they found some success in the console game business, with Saburo Jinguji and other titles, like Glory of Heracles and Metal Max, it wasn't enough to make up for their losses. Though they wouldn't officially declare bankruptcy until 2003, the writing was on the wall, and many of their IPs were sold off. Most of Team Jinguji, including Eishi Nishiyama, would join the newly established Work Jam. The company was founded by industry veteran Yutaka Kaminaga. Miraculously, Work Jam would acquire the Saburo Jinguji IP from Data East, meaning Team Jinguji survived Data East's closure. Work Jam actually released their own detective game in 1998, Cross Detective Story, wherein a little call-out to Saburo Jinguji can be found, so it's fitting they would acquire the IP. And they wasted no time, deciding to explore a bit more of Saburo Jinguji outside of video games. Numerous books were released, some chronicling the detective's personal life. Early Days, The High-Speed City, was a novel focused on Jinguji's high school days. The book contains illustrations and cover art by famed illustrator Hakan. And in a manner echoing Terada, this was some of his earliest professional work. The book also discloses more about Jinguji's home life, including his brothers and mother. Since the beginning, the series had plot points about family members and how Jinguji grew up, which did not appear in the games. Because of those elements, it was possible to think about new scenarios consistent with the existing story. 3 original novels were written by Kazutaka Kodaka, who will go on to create the Danganronpa series. While he doesn't remember much about the writing process, he does credit the series with getting him started, and the experience was invaluable and possibly influenced his original works. It was a long time ago, I don't really remember much, but it was the start of my career, and I really do appreciate it. Work Jam also made the smart decision of taking Jinguji mobile, with full remakes of the Famicom games brought to cell phones, through a partnership with Konami. They would release through the Konami Net DX service, Konami's own mobile app in Japan. And remake they did. With the exception of as time passes, each entry was given major overhauls, adding in new characters and culprits. The arguably goofy conclusion of Central Park Murder was given a much-needed rewrite, with a few callbacks here and there. The remakes were a hit, and Work Jam got the confidence to greenlight original cases for the growing cell phone market. These cases were shorter than a typical Jinguji bout, but did not skimp on the writing, and fans willing to take the chance discovered fully fledged mysteries one would expect from Jinguji. Many of these original cases were also written by Kazutaka Kodaka. They were the first detective stories I worked on for a game, so they helped influence me on my later work. I mostly had a lot of freedom when writing them too. I don't remember much, but I know I appreciate them. In total, 24 cases were released. WorkJam would also release standalone Mysterious Case Files episodes for mobile. But WorkJam didn't forget about Saburo's next mainline adventure, and development soon began for the PlayStation 2. It would be known as Innocent Black. In addition to the standard release, there was a special edition sold through Konami's website, Konami Style. It contained the game, a business card holder, and a fully functional Zippo. Innocent Black lets players know immediately this will be Jinguji's darkest adventure yet. Kaminaga himself stepped in to do the scenario, with assistance from Kaneko. In this game, Saburo and Yoko will find themselves in serious danger. But the game starts with their relationship in question. Saburo doesn't know how to approach Yoko, and though he had a resolution at the end of the dream, there are still some holes he has to fill. Saburo's growth as a character still isn't complete, and by the game's closure, he's at the end of his rope. He constantly puts himself in danger and is outwitted again and again, causing him to ignore his allies, and people are hurt because of him. Innocent Black highlights that no matter how great a detective he may be, he's not perfect, and he's pushed to his breaking point. The stakes have never been higher, as many characters are killed, and Saburo puts his life on the line. In the middle of all this, the player is made to think about Saburo and Yoko's relationship, and question if there's something deeper going on with them. The game opens with Saburo drinking at Bar Kazumi, stating he doesn't understand women, and flashing back to him trying to console a crying Yoko. At one point, Yoko even brings up that she planned on getting married in America, shocking Saburo. He also starts meeting with a woman, Toko, who gives him information on his case, and she wears some glamorous clothing when they go drinking. Just after this, Yoko cuts her hair. While nothing is explicitly stated, you can't help but wonder if Yoko is trying to get Saburo's attention. It then culminates towards the end when, in order to save Saburo, Yoko offers herself up as collateral to the villains. Saburo spirals into a frenzy to save her, and when he finds her, she's been brutally beaten and admitted to a hospital. This emphasizes that in this series, every character, including Yoko, is vulnerable to real danger, and Saburo is left feeling guilty about not being able to protect her. The Jinguji charm is still here, and with the time system gone, players are free to wander around for secrets, and in true 3D for the first time. Though there are only a few instances, it was nice to see WorkJam trying to push the envelope. After Data East's closure, Seiji Hamada had been working at Sega. He was enthusiastic to do more Saburo Jinguji, and he was able to return, but had to use a pseudonym, Hasami Ace Daichi. While wandering around, players just might uncover a password. A notable one, SLVR, features a cameo from Tokyo Morishima from Suda51's The Silver Case. Though a favorite in the series now, the game was controversial with fans back in the day due to the high death count, darker than usual tone, and depressing ending. Saburo fires Yoko, and the Jinguji Detective Agency is down to one employee. Kind of Blue was released 2 years later, a direct sequel to Innocent Black, and yes, it's named after the Miles Davis album. There was another Konami Special Edition that contained the game, the soundtrack on 3 CDs, and another Zippo. If you pre-ordered, you also got the premium DVD. This contains great behind-the-scenes footage, from filming the opening sequence, designing the game, the art, and more. It also has a little timeline and history of Saburo Jinguji. Very neat. Kind of Blue was written by Junichi Miyashita. He has an extensive credits list, including tokusatsu shows like Kamen Rider and Super Sentai, along with games like Resident Evil, Code Veronica. Yet he's best known for his work on Detective Conan, having been with the series since the anime first aired in 1996. So he was a natural fit for Saburo Jinguji. 4 months after firing Yoko, Jinguji hasn't had a case. Saburo gets calls about potential work, but he doesn't motivate himself to take a case. He's in a rut, something the player can feel. Except for a cat that wanders into the office. He's all alone. The first part of the game is deliberately run-of-the-mill. Yoko's absence is truly felt. This is the only game without an assistant to rely on. With its mundane structure and lonely atmosphere, the game risks boring the player. But it's this gameplay that perfectly captures the dullness of Jinguji's life. Gray skies and rain are constant throughout the entire game, another element that adds to the gloomy mood. Eventually the game opens up, and Saburo does take a case to track down the origins of a song, and only has a short recording to go off of. And of course, he gets involved in another, bigger matter, with Imazumi asking him to investigate a criminal organization called Pale Horse. The 3D search areas have been refined to be more fluid and bigger than ever. And factoring in Saburo's tight financial situation, money is now a gameplay component. Though by and large can be ignored during the main game, outside of paying NPCs for information, money is mostly used for side quests and goodies. Jinguji can buy records that can be played at Bar Kazumi, along with other little trinkets. These he can show to characters to try to get a response. If the player runs low on cash, Saburo can test his luck at the lottery, or sell items he can find while investigating, though these are hidden fairly well. Jinguji also has access to his cell phone, and at all times he can look at emails, get his fortune told, and check the weather. It's always raining. You can even change the ringtone and background. That's such a great attention to detail. Ooh, NTT Docomo. Along the way, he meets a group of former crooks, seeking counseling to readjust to society. They're outsiders. Even Jinguji has biases towards them, not taking their word or believing them about anything. It's this ignorance that makes him double down on a false lead, and the one to set him straight is Yoko. Her debut pulls at the player's heartstrings, as she chastises Jinguji for losing his way, and questions why he became a detective in the first place. To top it off, she enters the story because she's also receiving counseling after the events of Innocent Black. At this point, players may or may not have realized Jinguji has been a bit out of character. His distrust in people and apathetic attitude is a far cry from the detective the series is known for. Innocent Black left him broken, and now Jinguji is bitter and sullen. The narrative takes advantage of this new side of Jinguji that forces him to realize he is not the great Shinjuku detective he once was. In addition to solving the cases, Jinguji has to reattain his sense of self. Kind of Blue is a special game in the series. This is a more down-to-earth adventure for Saburo, and while it may not be as dramatic as its predecessors, it is a necessary addition to grow Jinguji's character. And at the very end, the sun comes out and Yoko rejoins the detective agency. From this point forward, Saburo Jinguji would continue his career on portable systems, a perfect fit for the series. The first was with Girl of the White Shadow for the Game Boy Advance. First run editions came with a mini CD and another Zippo. You know, it's kinda weird that a Japan-only series had lighters made in the USA. The game caters to the limitations of the hardware by streamlining some features. The difficulty and violence have been toned down, possibly to match the GBA's younger audience, as the story involves a missing child instead of a murder. Despite this, the plot is one of the deepest yet. Every character has realistic qualities to them. Adults might have a better appreciation for the story, despite the game being suitable for general audiences. Doesn't explain the Zippo though. The standout feature is the partner and deduction system. Yoko, or newcomer Haruno, will always accompany Jinguji and can learn and answer questions on behalf of him. Their AI is taught from assigning reasoning points. They can be a lifesaver. If the player chooses the wrong answer, the partner can swoop in with the right option. However, if they're both wrong, it's game over. But there is a problem. More often than not, partners will be wrong, especially at the start. Haruno is peppy and bright-eyed, eager to take on the challenges of a detective, so she fits the bill of training and building up your own partner, and the system was probably built with her in mind. But fans will want to have Yoko as their partner, yet the system will make her out to be a little wet behind the ears. Players have to watch Yoko make obvious wrong choices, and Jinguji explaining why her conclusion is wrong. Choosing between the partners does not affect the story, so it's all about preference, and you can't blame a Jinguji fan for wanting to use Yoko. Still, the game maintains its hard-boiled aesthetic, even on the GBA, and the story is quite heartwarming. The game is often overlooked, despite this being a full package, like a password system and a mystery case file story. It did prove that portability was a great fit for Jinguji, but the Game Boy Advance limited the visuals and audio. Thankfully, the Nintendo DS would fix that issue, just in time for the series' 20th anniversary. Ancient Memories launched in Japan on July 19, 2007. This was the first time a Saburo Jinguji game would be published by famed developer Arc System Works, and thanks to their international relations, Saburo Jinguji would be prepping his North American debut. The series scarcely left Japan. The only instance prior was Innocent Black and Kinda Blue released in South Korea. But for the first time ever, the series was brought over to North America. Axis Games handled the localization. Frank Bo de Wint, COO of Axis, had this to say on the series. We were originally introduced to Saburo Jinguji via Arc System Works and WorkJam back in the late 2000s. We were somewhat familiar with the series due to its popularity in Japan, and decided we'd try out localizing the game. Instead of directly translating Saburo Jinguji, they would adapt the game to fit an American setting. Thus, Saburo Jinguji became Jake Hunter. In fact, all the characters were given American names. Yoko Misono became Yulia Marks, and Sanzo Kumano became Scott Kingsley. And instead of Shinjuku, Jake Hunter takes place in the fictional American city of Aspicio. The name change from Saburo Jinguji to Jake Hunter was something we decided early on. The name primarily came from our head of marketing at the time, and we decided to move forward with the rebrand as such. Since other visual novels at the time had also Americanized the setting, we felt that we needed to do that as well, to cater to the audiences who enjoyed such titles. Ironically, I did assist with some of the localization at the time, so names like Yulia Marks and the city of Aspicio were the ones I came up with. Unfortunately, Detective Chronicles fell short of the Japanese release. Roughly half of Ancient Memories is included. The original contained a brand new story, along with the first 5 mobile releases, which were the 4 remakes of the Famicom games and Red Eye Tiger, a cell phone original. Detective Chronicles only has the remakes of Central Park Murder, Yokohama, and Dangerous Duo. Despite this, Axis Games went ahead with the release, running ads in Nintendo Power, and even highlighting the hard-boiled action. Joystick even named it one of the most anticipated releases of 2008. But ultimately, it didn't review well. Even review sites that were aware of Saburo Jinguji's existence, like Joystick, were disappointed with his American outing. At the time, we only had the manpower and capability to work on and release the game in half of its original form, to test out the waters. However, we quickly realized that releasing the title in that form wasn't the right way to go. We then decided we should give the title a second chance, and making sure the localization was up to par with such a text-heavy release. And thus, Jake Hunter Detective Story Memories of the Past came to fruition, and we were able to release the game for all our North American fans. A year later, Axis Games released a full localization of Ancient Memories, with Jake Hunter Memories of the Past. Everything from the original is included, even the plentiful of extras. The new story follows Ken, as a series of events leads him to breaking into Jake's office and stealing his records. He reads up on past cases, and in a clever twist, this is how the other 5 cases are framed, within the new story. Since this chronicles Jake's, or Saburo's, early adventures, it makes for a fantastic introduction to the character. Actually, Ken is on the cover for the Detective Chronicles release, even though he's not in this version. And it still says Shinjuku! The characterization of the cast has been tweaked. Jake speaks in a wisecracking kind of way, and refers to Yulia as Babe and Dollface. Very reminiscent of film noir stars like Robert Mitchum and Humphrey Bogart, what Western audience would think of when they hear the term hard-boiled. To counter this, Yulia is given a sarcastic side. This has caused some confusion with Western commentators, believing that these characteristics is the same for the original Jinguji and Yoko. However, this is not the case. Jinguji only refers to Yoko by her name, and Yoko has a polite, gentle nature. And Kingsley, like his name, is made to sound more old-fashioned. The Yakuza became the Italian Mafia, with name and phraseology changes to go along with it. Despite the effort, the American guise is thwarted almost immediately. The backgrounds are edited photographs, making it obvious this is Japan, not to mention cars driving on the wrong side of the road. There are some points in the game possibly poking fun at this, but other times it comes off odd. Capo Familia? That's the Furin-Kazan in the background. And at one point, Jake Hunter comes across the newest release of Saburo Jinguji, Shiki. Even if the translation takes a few liberties, the script is pretty good in its own right. Axis still stayed true to the characters and didn't really alter their backstories. And they went ahead and translated all 6 episodes of Jake Hunter Jake Hunter Unleashed, in addition to all the secrets the game contains. Ancient Memories is one of the most packed games in the series, and Axis was dedicated to getting the game right. One of the passwords is a message from the developers, but instead of WorkJam, it's the team at Axis. We felt it would resonate better and be better understood if we made all the staff comments come from Axis Games. The main editor at the time, myself, the marketing team, and others all helped to pitch in. We hope that people enjoyed playing through it. It's a fun insight into how the game was crafted over at Axis. Noelle from Blaze Blue, LLE? That's not how it's spelled. In the end, despite the major overhaul, Jake Hunter Memories of the Past provided American audiences access to the famed series. Saburo Jinguji officially made it to Western shores. This release fared much better with reviews, and according to Bo, we can't comment on actual numbers, but we were happy with the sales we had for the games. From 2007 to 2010, Saburo Jinguji would annually grace the Nintendo DS. These games would be dubbed the DS series, cleverly also standing for detective stories. They would also follow the format Ancient Memories established, with one brand new main case, 5 mobile releases, mystery case files, and a plethora of extras. The DS games quickly gained a reputation for containing enough content to satisfy any adventure fan. To many, these releases represent the pinnacle of the series. Arc System Works published all 4 entries, and with each new edition, the company invested more promotion into the franchise, even releasing a flash game on their website, wherein Jinguji roams the Arc System Works office in search of a missing Daisuke. Ishiwatari? No, it's a cat named Daisuke. Ah, okay. Thrown in are little adverts for Blaze Blue and Guilty Gear, though Jinguji doesn't seem impressed. It's cute. The DS era would be when artist Juni would start to work on the series. He said, "I was a big fan of the series, so I posted fan art of Jinguji on my blog. WorkJam saw it and contacted me, and I decided to participate. I knew Jinguji from Shinjuku Central Park Murder in 1987, though I didn't play the game. At the time, I was still a child and thought that Saburo Jinguji was a real person, and that the game was an autobiography based on the cases he solved. How naive I was. I think it was from At the End of the Dream on the PlayStation that I started to play the games properly. I was fascinated by Katsuya Terada's illustrations and fell in love with the series. I think the reason why I often draw Yoko with short hair is because I had a strong impression of Katsuya Terada's depiction of her in that game. I knew his character when I was a child, and even though I am now much older than him, I still have the same image of Jinguji as the adult I admire. I think he represents the image of a cool guy. I've been in charge of character design, illustrations for event scenes, and the main visuals used for sales promotions. I drew the images based on the instructions I received, and by comparing them with the scenario. I used Terada's artwork as a reference. I thought the Saburo Jinguji series was only possible because of his designs, so I tried not to lose that image. I still admire him to this day. However, I was also seeking to incorporate my own style, while staying close to the original. I didn't think it was that difficult to design hard-boiled characters, as designing characters with a realistic style is my strength. The difference between designing characters for Saburo Jinguji and other games is that most game characters are flashy and overdressed. However, the characters in Jinguji's world are all chic and realistic. I always tried to devise ways to make them unique. For example, I would take inspiration from the faces of celebrities on TV and exaggerate some parts. The main visuals are used for packaging and other purposes, and are like the face of the game. I put a lot of effort into drawing them, and I'm very proud with all the main visuals I worked on. There's nothing I made that I'm unsatisfied with, and I take pride in that. WorkJam also continued releasing new mobile episodes, and some would even grace the Nintendo DSi digital storefront, giving fans another way to play these fully fledged Jinguji stories. Some of the mobile cases would even make their way to South Korea. Also released on mobile was a new spin-off, Mystery Adventure Chronicles, an offshoot of Mystery Case Files. This sub-series is closer to an RPG, where players take control of Yoko, or rather her robot counterpart. You move across a map screen and battle enemies in a true RPG style, while solving puzzles. Jinguji even gets involved in some episodes. Unfortunately, these games have never been re-released in any form since their original mobile debut. But to make sure there was no shortage of hard-boiled adventures, Saburo also graced the PlayStation Portable in 2009, with Ashes and Diamonds, the third game to be named after a Kenji Sawada song. This one is interesting as, on the surface, it seems to have only one case, and while there is one main scenario, Jinguji is tasked with multiple investigations at the same time. The player has a choice to accept or decline these cases, and even if you accept, it's possible to fail by saying the wrong thing or misjudging a TPS section. And some of these sub-cases can't be accessed without meeting certain conditions in others. Luckily, a scenario flowchart is provided to show how the cases branch out and let the players go back and try again. This game introduces a rival for Jinguji, Yonaguni, and his assistant, DB. He's the polar opposite of Jinguji. On the outside he looks kind and approachable, but is actually cold-hearted. It also has a nice UI design, helpful info on the screen at all times, like character bios and locale explanations. Included, of course, is a mystery case file, and there's fun secrets to discover here like commentary from the voice cast,
良かったことがいっぱいありました。
and wallpapers for your PSP. Ooh, nice. Arc System Works implemented a unique promotional strategy for this title, creating the Jinguji Girls campaign. This had aspiring models audition for the roles of the Anonuma sisters. The chosen winners were hired as campaign girls, and were actively involved in various promotional activities. This included commercials and appearances at events hosted at real bars located in Kabukicho, with special Jinguji drinks of course. Notably, well-known model Yuko Takasaki also contributed to some of the ads. While Ashes and Diamonds released smack dab in the middle of the DS series, it was a sort of sister game to those titles. It did have a similar gameplay loop, so those wanting a slightly different Jinguji experience could easily jump in. But 2012 would disrupt this style of Jinguji when WorkJam released Rondo of Revenge for the Nintendo 3DS. For the first time, Saburo and his peers were fully rendered in 3D. The animation and models are really good, especially for a series that has never attempted 3D characters before. Jinguji's face is a little off though. This game is structured a bit differently. Jinguji is framed for a crime and on the run from both the police and gang members. He's chased at many points in the game, and the player has to lead him to safety. If caught, the game ends. When Saburo has to get down and dirty, losing a brawl or running out of HP also results in a game over. There are other times you have to search an area in a first-person view. During these segments, you also have to combine items you find, similar to a point-and-click game. TPS returns, but failing these segments, once again, results in a game over. With so many ways to fail at something, this is one of the more difficult entries. At certain points, you switch to playing as Yoko, though the bulk of the game is spent as Jinguji. A notable aspect is that many characters and story elements are pulled from past games. For instance, one of the men that captures and beats up Jinguji is the man he helped arrest at the start of the DS game, The Hidden Truth. The game also closes a small plot point introduced in Ashes and Diamonds, as Yanaguni and DB also appear. Even the mobile games are referenced. The Saraka gang that's after Jinguji first appeared in Portrait of a Dead Child. Jinguji also receives help from a character that was in the case 4 seasons, marking the only time a mobile character appeared in the mainline games. It certainly tried new ideas, but in doing so, it's the shortest game in the series, and the lightest in terms of content. No mobile cases, mystery case files, or passwords were included. Instead, there's an unlockable gallery for every NPC from previous games. These can be obtained during the main game, or with the 3DS's Street Pass feature. Yeah, really. It was clear WorkJam was stretched a bit thin with this title, and unfortunately, they shut their doors just after release, and the series went into a state of limbo. That is until 4 years later, when Arc System Works, publishers of the last 6 games, announced they acquired the Saburo Jinguji IP along with other assets from WorkJam.
もともと我々が譲り受ける前から歴史があってとても有名な、IP だったりしますので、我々が譲り受けてからも、とても重要な IP の一つとして取り扱うようにしています。
Arc System Works decided to develop the next game in-house, but received major support from another company. In a series of events that mirror what transpired over a decade prior, when WorkJam went under, employees, including Eiichi Nishima and Mitsui Kaneko, established Orange Inc., and Arc System Works looked to them to assist in the development of the next Jinguji game.
権利を取得する以前から、その元々の開発チームと連携をしてゲームを作ったりもしておりました。はい。で、権利をいただいてからはもちろん一緒に作ることもありますし、全く違うすごく過去に作ってた方にあえてお願いをしてみたりするっていうこともしてたりしますね。
権利元であるアークシステムワークスさんからの、依頼などでシナリオやグラフィックプログラムなどを主に担当しております。
So despite the change in logos, Team Jinguji was back. It's kind of incredible how the team was able to weather the closure of 2 companies, and the IP changing owners. Nevertheless, they were just in time for the detective's 30th anniversary. Ghost of the Dusk was made with the goal to celebrate the series and bring back what made Saburo Jinguji special. That meant appearances from most of the cast, multiple playable characters, searching environments, TPS, plenty of extras, an expansive narrative, and Katsuya Terada doing the box art.
まずゴースト・オブ・ザ・ダスクを作るときにですね、まだこのシリーズがですね、弊社の IP になる前だったんですね。なのでこのシリーズがこれからどうなっていくのかっていうのは実は我々でもわからない状態でして、でその中で35周年、30周年かを、迎えるということで、ユーザーの人たちにですね、悔いが残らないように、もう今まであるものとか全部入れて納得した作品を作りたいなというふうに思っておりました。
アークシステムワークスさんから、新作を作りたいという依頼を受けまして、ちょっと久々のタイトルでしたので、なるべくファンの方にとっても新規の方にとっても印象的になるタイトルにしたいという思いがまずありまして、キャッチー神宮寺らしさはありつつキャッチーに思えるものにしたいという考えから、まず屋敷物 というのが思い浮かびまして、でそこからいろいろと肉付けしていったという感じです。もちろん30周年なので何か歴史的なエピソードも入れたいと思いまして、ソ連のエピソードを考えたりとしました。
Over in America, the game caught Axis's eye, and they decided to bring Jake Hunter out from retirement. Nothing materialized with Jake Hunter after Memories of the Past, aside from 2 of the mobile cases releasing on the App Store as standalone games. This time, the script is directly lifted from the Japanese original, in more ways than one. Axis toned down the Western noir approach and reeled back Jake's use of Babe and Dollface. Since the first Jake Hunter was meant to take place in America, one would assume Ghost of the Dusk follows suit, but they're actually vague about it. The storyline involves the aftermath of World War II and prisoners of war in the USSR. With a Japanese setting and characters, this is perfectly fine, but would not work in America from a historical standpoint. So the setting is no longer America, but still is in Japan. There's dialogue that flat out says this is a different country, so Axis, wanting to be closer to the source material, quietly dropped the American setting, but kept the American names. Pre-ordering the game gave Japanese early adopters 3 special themes for the 3DS, one for Jinguji, Yoko, and Kumano. They even talk to you.
やめておこう。
やめておきますね。
これがいいの。
I also really like how they say something when opening the 3DS from sleep mode.
おお、待っとったぞ。
Also included was a special downloadable version of Yokohama Port Serial Murder. All this does is tweak the graphics of the Famicom game. Like, really, just tweaks them. I can't believe they bothered with this. This is so weird. In returning to what made Saburo great, the team strove to match the content output of the DS era by including passwords, a mystery case file, and the remaining 4 mobile cases. The main narrative for Ghost of the Dusk also tugs at the heartstrings for many longtime fans, with quick references to previous games and an opportunity to see the main trio grow more. Ghost of the Dusk was indeed the celebration that gave many fans exactly what they wanted. So Saburo Jinguji was back, and his new owners at Arc System Works weren't done just yet. The Nintendo 3DS was well on its way out, and its successor, the hybrid Nintendo Switch, would be the next system the detective had his sights on. As the Switch is both a portable and home console, this is Saburo's return to a home platform in 17 years. Though for good measure, it would also release on the PlayStation 4. Prism of Eyes was released in 2018, once again developed by Orange, with Katsuya Terada coming back to do the box art. The focus of the game is the main trio, with each getting stories all their own, in addition to remakes for 10 of the mobile cases. And of course, passwords to find, galleries to unlock, and a mystery case file to crack. The overall look of the game might put off some fans, but it's another quality Jinguji game all the same. Special editions came with a soundtrack, a microfiber glass cleaning cloth, a wall scroll, and a drinking glass. Cool. Included is a demo for a game titled Daedalus. This was billed as a special entry in the series, and would release a few months later in the fall of 2018. Daedalus, The Awakening of Golden Jazz, is the most unique and atmospheric entry to date. The setting, New York City. The lead, university student Saburo Jinguji. The case, the murder of Kyosuke Jinguji, Saburo's grandfather. It was developed by Nilo, with Sega legend Takashi Yuda directing and Makoto Asai doing the soundtracks. The game is a prequel to the entire series, and no one was better to bring back to write the narrative than Hirotaka Inaba. He already wrote about Saburo's time in New York during At the End of the Dream, and still is very familiar with the established lore Team Jinguji made all those years ago. Arc System Works asked me to create a new scenario for Saburo Jinguji. They wanted a new story to commemorate the 20th anniversary of At the End of the Dream. Although I had not worked on any entries since, I had always been thinking about what I would write if I had to do it again, a story about the past. I told this to them and asked them to consider it. I am very grateful that they agreed. Arc System Works initially only planned an English release in Southeast Asia, a common trend in gaming nowadays, but at the last minute decided to officially publish the game in North American territories on the Switch, PS4, and Steam. The official name of these versions is Alternate Jake Hunter Daedalus. Even appears on the title screen, which is an odd choice because he only goes by Saburo Jinguji in this game, not Jake Hunter. Special editions came with an audio CD, art book, and a steelbook. For a CD. Even for the Switch version. How am I supposed to keep this in here? Oh, like that? The game utilizes a 360-degree camera. You can look all around to see the environment and characters near you. The game doesn't hide the fact that it's using real photos with a filter, and the style may not be to everyone's cup of tea. But the visual effects and audio design really stand out. The menu sounds and intertwining text seamlessly blend together. and the ambiance captivates in an enchanting and unforgettable way. Combined with the music, the game has a profound yet striking atmosphere. There really isn't anything else quite like it. Two major characters who have been consistently referenced throughout the series would finally make their in-game debut: Saburo's grandfather, Kyosuke, and Dan, Saburo's mentor. These characters were always part of the Jinguji lore, but were never explicitly mentioned in-game. Most games just offhandedly mentioned that Saburo worked as an assistant to a detective in New York. Dan appears via flashbacks in the book The City of Encounters, which was written in 1997, and included in Innocent Black's strategy guide is a short story on how Kyosuke became a detective. Despite Saburo's backstory being incredibly detailed, not being present in the games meant that fans would have to do their own investigations to uncover more of the lore. The Kind of Blue guidebook, for example, included a chart detailing Saburo and Yoko's early life. Dan and Kyosuke are mentioned, but so are things like the name of Saburo's childhood pet dog. That's how fleshed out the backstory was. Daedalus including these characters kinda makes it a landmark entry. Jirota Kosugi is the most recurring actor to have played Saburo, having voiced him in 5 games. Here, he instead plays Saburo's grandfather, a nice touch. Personally speaking, after so many games taking place in Japan, it's euphoric to have one set in my hometown, and being able to recognize places in the game. So this is City Hall? No, it's not. While the game doesn't require knowledge of the series' 30-year history, those familiar with Saburo Jinguji will find Daedalus both enchanting and isolating. Witnessing the first meeting between Jinguji and Yoko is magical in a way. The event was always referenced in past games. Seeing it unfold in Daedalus uncovers a piece of the Jinguji lore. However, this also means Daedalus retcons the series. The incident with Yoko's boyfriend was always presented as the first meeting between Jinguji and Yoko. Daedalus changes it to them now meeting much earlier. In addition, Kyosuke was dead by the time Saburo was in high school, according to the early days book. Even so, these changes don't impact the overall Jinguji story, and Daedalus having these characters really adds to the series. Some information was touched upon in past games and books, and some parts of Daedalus follows that content, but some of the story elements could not be incorporated for various reasons. In that sense, I think Daedalus is kinda like an alternate universe. But at the same time, it's easy to forget that this is related to the Hard-Boiled series. It's a consequence of Daedalus being so distinct from the other games. Upon reaching the end, hearing those familiar words, and seeing the present Saburo Jinguji at the end of Daedalus' art book, it's remarkable to be reminded that this little game is the beginning of the then 30-year-old series. Prism of Eyes and Daedalus would be the last outings for Saburo Jinguji. 2019 did see the release of a new mobile title, New Order, developed by Orange, but it contained only one new case. Arc System Works and Orange moved on to different endeavors. That being said, Jinguji has made appearances every now and then elsewhere. Way back in the Data East days, the 4th Glory of Heracles game, Gift of the Gods, has a small nod to him in the recruitable character Zaburo, who has hair similar to Saburo and can smoke and drink. Saburo properly appeared in Orange's Golden Eagle game as part of a special story. In 2020, he was a playable character in Arc System Works' Code Shifter. The Western release even refers to him as Jake Hunter. Yoko and Kumando also appear as support characters. Interestingly, their names jump between the original and localized names. Online manga adaptations of As Time Passes and At the End of the Dream were made in 2015, and a plethora of merchandise has been made over the years. When Nintendo celebrated the Famicom's 40th anniversary in 2023, Central Park Murder was one of the few chosen games to represent 1987. The write-up even mentions the smoking command. Jinguji has appeared occasionally outside of games as well. Central Park Mystery was featured in an episode of Game Center CX. He also has a cameo in the manga Chio School Road, which was retained in the anime adaptation. Saburo Jinguji has certainly left an impression on gamers. If you are fond of gaming and grew up in Japan during the 90s, chances are you at least heard about the Shinjuku detective. Some players have always wondered if Jinguji and Yoko ever had romantic feelings for each other. There are certainly some hints.
探偵と助手というところはまずベースにあって、それ以上の思いというのは2人の間にはあると思っています。ゲームでもそうですね、ちょっとはっきりと恋愛関係にあるとかいったものはぼかしているゲームはいろいろあるとは思います。
When asked, Ichi Nishiyama said, I really don't know their relationship. A lot of games try to do things and have narratives that are only possible in video games, but Saburo Jinguji's approach to realism, deep characterization, and staying with tradition makes it a series all its own.
当時見てた人が思ってるより、当時は思い入れがなかった。でも仕事としてはもうめちゃくちゃ一生懸命やった記憶があるので、絵もいっぱい描いたし、だからその最初の、プロの仕事としてゲームの仕事ができた最初なので、はい、その高揚感が一番大きかったと思います。いやいや、それはもう間違いなく、ゲームはもう、はい、ほとんどその、キャラクターデザインなんて最初の旗振りに過ぎないの。もう作ってる人が主役やから、それはもうその人たちの力で多分、神宮寺の魅力は、未だにあるんじゃないかと思います。
神宮寺三郎シリーズはですね、長い弊社が IP を取得する以前から長い歴史のあるタイトルでして、我々もそれを扱えることをとても光栄に思っているタイトルの一つなんですね。で、今やはり時代の流れとかでテキストアドベンチャーっていうものが結構他のタイトルに比べてあまりメジャーではなくなってきているところではあるんですけれども、一つの時代というかを築いたとてもいい方法の一つだとは思っているので、もしかしたら我々もテキストアドベンチャー以外で作るかもしれないんですけども、神宮寺三郎シリーズを好きなユーザーにまた届けたいなっていう気持ちがありますので、もし我々がまたチャレンジさせていただいた際にはユーザーの皆さん喜んでいただけるように頑張りたいと思っているので、応援をよろしくお願いします。
私はまだ新人の頃に神宮寺のイノセントブラックに関わったのが初めてだったんですけれども、それからもう本当10年20年ともっとずっと長く関わらせていただくことになって、本当にそれは幸運なことだったと思っています。今これだけある程度成長できたのはスタッフの方であったりファンの方々のおかげであったと本当に思っているので、本当にこの場を借りて、ありがとうございましたとお礼を伝えたいです。
It's a dream come true to have worked on Saburo Jinguji. It's one of my favorite game series. It's not known what's next for Jinguji, Yoko, and Kumano, but it will be interesting to see where their next adventure takes them, especially in a modern-day Japan, where smoking has greater restrictions. Whether the series returns in a big way or remains a niche favorite among adventure fans, one thing's clear. The case files may be closed, but the spirit of Saburo Jinguji lives on, having cemented himself as one of Japan's signature adventure game detectives. And in a dark corner of Shinjuku, a cigarette is lit.
俺はタバコに火をつけた。